Hi everyone. Today we're reviewing Star Wars Unlimited. This is a new two-player card game from Fantasy Flight Games. The game has been released through a couple of two-player starters and boosters that you can use to expand the game. Today we're reviewing the game using the Spark of Rebellion two-player starter set, which, as you can see, pits Luke Skywalker against Darth Vader. There's another starter set out there which is Mandalorian themed, and then there's boosters which you can mix and match. So this is first comment on this game is that this is unlike some of the most recent games from Fantasy Flight Games. This is not an LCG. This is not a living card game. This is a TCG, like Magic the Gathering and others, where you can get boosters. There's rarity in the cards, and you're going to be able to deck build. However, one thing that I wanted to mention is that you have that possibility of the boosters in the investment, but you can also just stay. You can also just buy this starter set and or the Mandalorian starter set, and maybe there will be more starter sets in the future. And you can use these decks to play with your friends without having to invest in the game and being and going to competitive tournaments. The game is heavily based on Magic the Gathering and other games of the same genre, but it has some improvements. I feel that the game has things that were picked up from here and there, and it also has obviously a Star Wars theme, which is interesting for all the Star Wars fans out there. Do not confuse this game with also a recent game from Fantasy Flight Games called Star Wars Deck Builder. That's an LCG. It's a deck builder. This game is a TCG where you play against another player. The objective is to destroy your opponent's base. So each player will have its own base. So you can see here we have the administrators, tower, cloud city, and your opponent in this case would have the command center Death Star. This is the number of health points or hit points, 30. So the objective is to run these down to zero. Whoever destroys their opponent's base first will win. So it's a race to 30 hits basically. In terms of the contents, the game comes in as you can see in a fairly small box. It includes a couple of posters, paper posters that can be used as play mats. I don't think they're necessary or that interesting to use. The game also comes with two cardboard boxes that will take both decks, and the decks with sleeves will fit, which is always nice. The game comes with a bunch of tokens. Most of the tokens, as you can see, are damage tokens. So one hit point, 10 hit points, etc. There is also I'm just going to open this here. There's also an initiative counter that indicates the player that goes first. And there's a couple of other counters which I will cover in a bit. But most of the counters, as you can see, are these health hit counters, which are a bit flimsy, but they do the trick, and you can always upgrade to other tokens. And then most of what comes in the box, obviously there's also a rule book, small rule book, full color. It includes some examples, and it's pretty straightforward to go through. I think it's pretty easy to learn the game. The game then comes with two decks. One is the Imperial deck, led by Darth Vader. The other one is Luke Skywalker's Rebels, the Rebel Alliance. The decks are not sleeved. I've sleeved them because there's a lot of shuffling in this game. You're probably going to want to sleeve them. But there's two decks that come in, and that's basically it for the contents of the game. In terms of the cards, we have, first of all, I've already shown the base. We also have leader cards. So in this case, we have Luke Skywalker, and it has these cards are double-sided. All the leader cards are double-sided. So in this case, Luke Skywalker comes in like this, and then you can use what is called an epic action, which I will explain in a second, to flip him over to the unit side. And exactly the same with Darth Vader. He comes like this, and you can flip him for it to become a unit. However, they always do something while they're in this state. So you got your leaders. You got also your events. I'm just gonna shuffle here through to see if I can find an event. Where are my events? So an event here, for example, the card says event here at the top. It's called Overwhelming Barrage. It's a tactic, and it gives a friendly unit +2/+2 for this phase. Then it deals damage equal to its power divided as you choose among any number of other units. So basically, event cards, you pay whatever says here at the top to put that card in play. You do whatever the card says, and you discard it. It's a one-off. I'll explain in a bit how you pay for these cards to actually use them. There's also units, and there's upgrades. Units are, as you can imagine, so for example, let me take this one. You got Leia Organa here, and this is an example of a unit card. So it costs 2. These are the traits or affiliations of the card. Name of the card. You will see here that there's a star on the card here before the name. This indicates that it's a unique character. So you cannot have 2 of these at the same time on the table. So you can have a Leia. Leia can die, and then you can get another Leia, but you cannot have 2 Leias, which wouldn't make sense. So that's thematic. This is the attack value. This is the health points, any other traits that the card has, and then this is a special ability. So in this case, when you play Leia on the table, because it says when played, you either ready a resource or exhaust the unit. Also, bear in mind that the card says here at the top, ground. There will be cards that say, on the other hand, space. And this is because you're going to have 2 arenas. You're going to have a ground arena where there's ground fighting, and a space arena where there's space fighting. So this is an innovative mechanism in this game, I think, where you have 2 separate arenas where you fight. And then you also have upgrades. Upgrades are usually objects or other things that can upgrade your character. So in this case, we have Vader's lightsaber. You can attach it to a non-vehicle, so you attach it to a character, a unit, a non-vehicle unit, so character, and it gives you a boost if it's attached to Darth Vader because it is his lightsaber. But in this case, I've attached it to Emperor Palpatine. What it does, it gives +3/+1. So Palpatine, as long as he has this Vader's lightsaber on him, he attacks with 9, which is quite a lot, and he has 7 hit points or health points. So these are the 3 types of units that you have in the game. You have the events, the upgrades, the units, and also, like I mentioned, the leaders. The game comes with a bunch of there's a bunch of keywords in the game that I'm not going to go through, but it's a bit like Magic the Gathering again. There's keywords like Sentinel, which means that you always need to attack that character instead of attacking other units. You've got Overwhelm, which means that any excess points done in combat are given as health points to the base, to your opponent's base, and other things. But I think that at least on this set, the number of keywords isn't overwhelming, and you've got a glossary here, which basically covers, I think, all of them: ambush, crit, overwhelm, raid, restore, saboteur, sentinel, shielded. I think these are all the keywords in this set. So the instruction manual does a good job of explaining how these keywords work. Even though I believe in all of the cards, the keyword is explained. So here, Palpatine, overwhelm. It explains what overwhelm is, so you don't actually need to go through the rule book. How does the game play in a nutshell? You start by having your base, your opponent's base, your leader in horizontal form, in non-unit form, your opponent's leader, and you're gonna draw 6 cards, and out of those 6 cards, you're gonna choose two to put here on the table as resources. These are the resources that you're going to use to pay for cards that you're going to put on the table and for actions. How do you pay? Well, you basically, like in Magic the Gathering and other games, you basically tap to exhaust the resources to pay for whatever you're doing. Um, the, the way it works is, so you're going to get 6 cards. You're gonna put two on the table. So you're going to start your game with 4 cards. Every turn or every phase, you're going to get 2 cards from your draw deck, and out of all the cards that you have in your hand, and there's no hand limit, you can choose to put one down as a resource like this. Um, this card will never go back into your deck or into your hand. It's just a resource, which you're going to use to pay for cards. So there's some interesting decision making there on whether you want to throw that card away or not. After the initial 2 resources, placing a resource on subsequent phases is not mandatory; it's optional. But you're probably going to want to do it at least for the first phases, or until you have enough resources to do what you want to. The game plays in alternate way. It's not a bit different from other card games of the same type. It's action, 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 action. So I don't play all of my turn and then my opponent plays all of their turn. It's rather I play an action, my opponent plays an action, I play an action, my opponent plays an action until we both pass. So I like this because it keeps the game more. It reduces downtime where your opponent is doing a lot of things during their turn and you're just watching, and it makes it for a more fast-paced game where it's always back and forth, and some of the actions are pretty quick. Um, what actions can you do? And this is the bulk of it is going to be playing actions. There are 5 actions that you can do. Again, you can only take one action during your turn, but there are 5 actions that you can choose from. I'm gonna mention the two most straightforward ones. One is to take initiative, which means that you take this token, which is essentially a first player token. This can only be done once per phase, so only one of the players gets to do this in a phase. The player that already has this token can choose to do that, to keep the token. But like I said, first player to do that in a phase gets the token. The second thing you can do is pass. And again, if 2 players pass, the phase is over. If one player passes and the other player chooses initiative, then the phase is also over. Bear in mind that unlike in other games, especially in a lot of Euro games, where in many Euro games when you pass, your turn is over until the next round. In this game, you can pass, your opponent does an action, and then you can do an action. You don't you're not passing and basically forfeiting your phase. Even though if your opponent passes or chooses this, again, the phase is over. So you need to have that in mind. And then the 3 main actions. One is to play cards. Playing cards is quite straightforward. Is straightforward. You basically need to pay whatever the cost here is at the top. This in number of resources. So, for example, if I want to play the Consular Security Force, it costs 4. I will tap 4, and it's going to come in on the ground because it's a ground unit, and it's going to come in exhausted. All cards come in exhausted, so they can't attack. They can be attacked, but they can't attack until they're readied. Same thing with the space units. So this one, for example, the Alliance X-Wing, I would pay 2. It comes in, it's a space unit, so it come in tapped like this. Some cards have effects of when played. For example, this one here says when played, you may attack with the unit. If it's a rebel unit, it gets +2/+0 for this attack. So you do those effects over there. Other cards say when attacking, or others. So you basically read the card, and you know that you're going to have to do some things at a certain point. Then the second thing you can do, you can trigger some abilities. Then the second thing, the other action you could, the other action you can do is to attack. And to attack, you're basically going to choose one untapped card of yours, so one ready card, or unexhausted, different ways to say the same thing. And you're going to choose to attack either another unit, an opponent's unit, or the opponent's base. So a quick example is I've got two Alliance X-Wings here, X-Wing here. This one is tapped, so it cannot attack, but this one can attack. And to attack, I would simply say I'm attacking, and I basically say I'm attacking with this X-Wing, and now I can choose to attack another unit of my opponent in space or their base. I cannot attack space versus ground or ground versus space. If I attack the base, it's very simple. I'm doing 2 points of damage here, so the base would take 2 points of damage. I put 2 tokens there. If I attack, the more interesting example is if I attack my opponent's unit in this case, what happens is they simultaneously do their attack to one another. So my Alliance X-Wing would attack with 2. This TIE fighter has a health of 1, so the TIE fighter would die. The card would be discarded. The TIE fighter would hit with 2. I have health points 3. So what would happen is I take 2 hits, but this Alliance X-Wing remains. So essentially, let's say I was attacking the TIE fighter. I exhausted, the TIE fighter goes away, it's discarded because it's been killed, but I'm going to take 2 points of damage here because of the TIE fighter's counterattack. When this card hits the 3rd point in future turns, it will be killed and discarded. So these health points accumulate. There are ways to basically get rid of hit points, which lets you heal your characters. And I'm just looking for a card here. For example, this one here, repair. It's an event and it heals 3 damage from a unit or a base. So I could play this for 1. Again, I would tap 1 resource for that to heal 3 points. From here, I just remove the tokens. I can also play events during my turn. I like when I play cards, I can also play events. This is basically the attack in a nutshell. I can attack, so exhausted units cannot attack, but I can attack with a ready unit. I can attack an exhausted unit from my opponent, but they still strike back. And then there's keywords and things that come into play, but we don't need to get into that. Finally, the last action that you can do is to use an action. An action is something that is indicated on the card as action. So for example, if we take Luke Skywalker has an action which costs 1, so I need to pay 1 resource. Luke Skywalker gets tapped, and I will give a shield token to a unit with this symbol that I've played this phase. So the way this would work is, let's say I played Leia Organa this phase, so Leia came into play. During my next action, I will use Luke Skywalker. I pay 1, I tap Luke Skywalker, and I'm going to give a shield, which are these tokens, to Leia Organa. To give her the shield, I just put the card like this to indicate that Leia has a shield. Shield, by the way, is basically a it prevents one-off damage. So if there's damage done to the unit, this damage gets prevented, and the shield goes away. So it's a nice protection. Darth Vader also has an action. You pay 1, and if I play the card with that symbol this phase, I deal 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to a base, so to the opponent. There are other cards that have also actions that you can do, and then there's a special type of action which is called epic action, which you can only do once per game. And I was just trying to find here an example. So see, this is another example of an action. Admiral Lazel action, you tap. You don't need to pay for this action actually, but you tap the card and you play an Imperial unit from your hand, paying its cost. It enters play ready. Each opponent may ready unit. So it's an interesting decision making. There's interesting decisions to be made because I have this admiral, and either I can attack with him or I can use him for the action. But unless I have something to ready him, I'm only going to be able to do one or the other. So decisions to be made. There's like I said, there's an epic action and it's called epic action because you can only do it once per game. In the case of Luke Skywalker, the epic action, which you see here at the bottom, is if you control 6 or more resources, and you just need 6 resources here. You don't need to tap them; they can be tapped or untapped. You flip him, ready him, and move him to the ground arena. So you basically would flip him to the unit side, and he would be added here to the ground arena. And Luke Skywalker, as you can see, is a character 4/7, and on attack you can give another unit a shield token, so he gives shield tokens to friends. Now, this unit can be attacked like any other unit, and once this unit is killed, it flips back into this state, so it goes back here, so you don't lose that, but you put a marker here, which is these markers here, to indicate that you've already done the epic action. What this means is that you can only do this transformation from leader to unit once in the entire game. That's epic action is a one-off. Darth Vader has the same thing, but for Darth Vader you need 7 or more resources. You flip him, you put him on the ground, and when he attacks, he can deal. So he's a 5/8, and when he attacks, you can deal 2 damage to a unit. And then maybe you want to put the Vader's lightsaber on him. So when it's played and it's attached to Darth Vader, it can deal 4 damage to a ground unit, and it would go like this. Again, the same thing as Luke. If Darth is defeated, goes back into this leader position with the epic action already having been taken. So again, just quick recap. You can do one of 5 things. You can play cards from your hand. You can attack. You can use an action, including the one-time epic action. You can pass, or you can take initiative. You go back and forth until the round is over. When the phase is over, there's a cleanup phase where you essentially draw 2 cards from your deck. You can choose to resource one, basically taking 1 card from your hand and putting it here on the resource pile. It's not mandatory, and it doesn't have to be one of the 2 cards that you drew. It can be any card that you have in your hand. And then you and your opponent are going to ready all of their. You're both going to ready all of your cards, and you're going to go to the next turn until one of the bases gets destroyed. Now, in terms of review for the game, I think I'm going to give it 3. I'm going to give it 3 pluses and 2 minuses. And then I'll give a score at the end. Just in terms of plus, I think it's a very easy game to learn. The rule book is very good. I read it in like maybe 10 minutes, and I immediately knew how to play the game. There were a couple of things that I had to look up, but the game it comes with a few examples. The game is easy. And the thing is, if you've played this type of games before, Magic the Gathering or others, this will be quite intuitive. It has some differences, obviously, but it's quite intuitive. So very easy to learn, potentially hard to master, but very easy to learn. I think the another plus is that the game is fun. The game duration is just right. It's like a 20-minute game. It's not more than that. It doesn't drag on. After when you get more resources onto the table, it starts ramping up quite quickly, and you can really do a lot of damage to your opponent's base. And I think the game is fun. It's a fun system. The back and forth with the actions is quite interesting. And I think the other plus is that the Star Wars theme isn't super deep, but I think it's good enough. So you have things like in the game, like we have all the characters, and some of them are pretty well done. You have the lightsabers, for example, and you have other things, other cards that are quite thematic. So, for example, this one, I am your father. You deal 7 points of damage to an enemy unit unless the controller says no, and in that case, you draw 3 cards. No, I'm not your father. And I think the game has enough to feel thematic. It doesn't feel like, for example, here the Force Choke. That's another very thematic card. I don't think it's a super thematic game, just of the way, just because of the way the system is. Like, it's a Magic the Gathering type system. I don't think it's super deep, but I think it is. It's thematic enough. It's medium for theme. The minuses, I think, very quickly. The minuses, one is that it's a trading card game, so it's a potentially a money sink if you want to get serious and competitive, or you're going to buy boosters and all of that. Um, so that's an issue. But I think, like I said, you can just stay with the starters and not go beyond that, and you'll be fine. If you want to get competitive, then you're going to have to go through for boosters. And I think the other thing is it's not a very original game. So if you've played this other types of games like this, it's going to feel familiar. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it gets the best things from a lot of games. The art, I'm going to say, for me, it's fine. I've heard that a lot of people don't like it, but for me, the art looks absolutely fine. And I recommend the game, and I will give it an 8 out of 10, which is, you should buy it. Thank you.